Right, you lot, and welcome to the lovely Alvechurch Fisheries, where we are on the canal pool today, and we're going to do a bit of almost a sad one. We're going to do it. It's coming into winter and everything's going to get a little bit harder type of feature, because we're on literally last day of October now. It's trick-or-treating. We're going trick-or-treating tonight. I'm going trick-or-treating. Anyway, last day of October, and yeah, I want to talk about fishing, sort of keeping things delicate for carp. I mean, let's say we're on canal pool today. We believe, I haven't been on here before, but it's very much a carp, barbel, no F1s. I mean, it's a big quality fish sort of match that you've got to fish, particularly when it gets cold. And I want to go through the ways of feeding, the different changes in baits, just what we need to do in the winter. I mean, we're not quite rock bottom yet, where dobbing's going to come into it, which would obviously play a big part. Once the water goes a bit clearer, the fish gets a bit more dormant. But today, it's still feeding. I mean, it's still nice. Probably the next month, we still get away with feeding rather than dobbing. And that's what I want to do. So there's no F1s. So that sort of feeding goes out the window a bit. You have to think about things a little bit more carefully when it comes to catching carps. So that is what I'm going to go through. As you can see, bait, ridiculously simple. That's the thing I love most about this time of year, is the bait tray it's as basic as it can get. So with the only thing missing there is probably a slice of bread if it's rock bottom, and a tin of corn maybe. I was a bit gutted I forgot to put a tin of corn in this morning, because that would also be a brilliant standout bait. But I'd still say for 90% of the fishing, it's going to be maggots playing a big part, of course, but not in an F1 way where you're loose feeding and feeding lots of bait. Maggots tend to be a hook bait or just tapping a few in. Ground bait, of course, massive when it comes to all crushed sort of pellet ground baits for the winter. They are probably I'd say it's my most important bait this time of year. I'd say that overtakes pellets. There's a little bit of ground bait. We've got some fishery pellets. We've just done some lovely soft 2 mils. Very dark then, but I'll talk about them when we do. And the expanders come out the bag, or the expanders finally get used. So I was saying to Jakey, I probably prepare a bag of expanders for every single match I go to all year. And I don't use them ever, until it gets to now, till November happens. That's when I finally start putting expanders on. In fact, no, I'll contradict that. I never use them in any water more than 2 foot. They're only ever an edge or a far bank thing when F1 fishing. Now, however, it changes, and definitely I'll use expanders as opposed to hard pellets in that deep water a lot more, just because the more, if anything, the more appealing to other fish, more versatile is the one in the species that you catch. I mean, hard pellets are great. They are my bait in the summer. That's all I want to use. But once it gets cooler now, I'm not going to say nuisance fish, but the other fish that you may necessarily not want to catch during the summer, they get so much more important now. The funky fish, do you know what I mean? The big skimmers, the crucians, the weird fish that we love catching, they're what are so important at this time of year. So by either using maggots or, as I say, getting the expanders out the bag, that is the key thing for this time of year. And that's what my day's going to be about today. I'm going to keep things very simple, talk about setting traps, covering depths, and having various lines in your peg that you're sort of skipping about. I mean, you start things very negative with minimal lines, and then you move from that, but I'll elaborate on that in a bit. So, bait's done, my expanders are done. Let me touch on that really quick. They've been done. They're just standard 4 mil pro expanders. Still on 4 mils this time of year. I tend to not go really tiny unless I'm skimmer fishing. So for carp and whatever else, I still want a decent mouthful. Never a fan of 6s though. I always feel 6s are a bit big. I feel like I get very full up off a 6 mil. So 4 mils for me are all I ever use. And they've been prepped in a bag with a little bit of water to make them soft, but not enough to make them go, nah. I mean, I want them to stay as dense and as small and as heavy as possible. So they've just been added with a little bit of water in the bag, tiny bit of banoffee flavouring as well. The flavouring, not the oil. It's a glycerin base, so that adds a nicer smell. It makes it smell nice on my fingers, but also adds a tiny bit of weight to them. Because it's glycerine, it's denser than water, it wants to sink. Just another element, a key thing when it comes to expanders, is keeping them as heavy as possible. It's massive, it's vital. You're trying to replicate having that hard pellet weight on the hook, but with a nigh on neutral buoyancy bait if not prepared in the right way. So they're done, they're ready to go. I'm going to rip them open now, straight out the back. Let me get my scissors. We chop the knots off, and they go straight into a tub. Yeah, as they are. So I don't bother putting them in water. Yeah, they're done. They already sink. If I chuck them in, they sink like a brick straight away. I do not need to do anything to them. And by adding any water to them, I might make them a bit softer. Don't want to do that. So that's my expanders ready to go. There's a bit of water already in that tub. Let's get rid of that. Ready to go, beautiful. They will last, especially in this weather. Now it's cooler, I can leave them like that all day. They literally won't change, and as you can see, they're quite tight, quite dense. I mean, a lovely, lovely pellet, very, very similar size to the 4mm hard pellets that I'd like to feed if it was a little bit warmer and the fish were all over the place, but they're not. So, feeding, I'm going to prep my line straight away. I plumbed up my peg. A bit of a weird one, this very flat peg. I mean, very, very flat canal up to the vegetation. I've got a bit of a slope short, then I've got a bit of a trough up into the middle, and I've fished just to the bottom. That's the fish, I've seen that. Just to the bottom of the trough, I've chosen that because I'm probably getting about 4.5, 5 foot there. That's my deepest area, which this time of year, vital to have a line in it just in case. It's weirdly the only time I'll actually fish for carp in the middle of a canal. I mean, during the summer, it just doesn't ever happen. It's always on the slope or in the edge. This time of year, I'll always put lines in the middle as well because it's often where they want to be. So we've got that covered. I'm going to feed that in a sec. And then the other one, it comes up a little bit just after midpoint, and then it stays very, very flat all the way to the edge of those rushes where there's probably a slope. But there's that much vegetation this time of year, you can't get on the slope. So I've ended up getting, what have I got, 3.5 foot? So lovely, yeah. I've literally got 1.5 foot difference between my two rigs. I've got 3.5 and probably 5 foot in the deepest water. And I'm going to cover those two areas. I've got no other depths other than in the edge where I can find really shallow. Everywhere in the peg itself is quite deep, which is nice. More than happy with that. This time of year, as soon as it gets cold, for carp in particular, and feeding more importantly for carp, not just dobbing, 2.5 foot plus is always going to be my target area. Very, very rarely any shallower, depending on the venue, but 2.5 foot, 3 foot in particular is the happy depth. So anyway, feeding and keeping things very, very simple. I say for the video itself, we're just going to do 2 lines. What I would do if I were fishing a match, I'd have a lot of lines potentially. I mean, I'd have 2 edges, maybe 4 edges, a short line, a longer line down the middle, 3 or 4 lines across that are all fed with little tiny piles, and they're just little tiny traps that I skip about between the two, just trying to catch an odd fish. I mean, the numbers are so much smaller in the summer. Like, I'm not sure what stamp of fish we're catching in here, but if say they're £4 a piece and you're only catching 40 pounds to win the match, it's very, very few bites. So you're never going to have one line that you're building up and making things happen on. It's a case of just letting the fish trip up, almost picking one off, not catching them too much in an area because it becomes an unsafe place then, once they keep getting nailed in that same spot all the time. Instead, I just want lots of little areas I can skip about, picking the odd one off, so trying to keep in touch with whatever the target weight may be. So I'm going to put some bait in. So again, something unusual that I wouldn't do in a normal match. I want to just fish one line and see how they go. Today, however, I want to prep a line. My middle line is actually going to be prepped, and what it's going to be prepped with is just a tiny bit of micros and ground bait, because I'd like to feed just micros on their own to begin with, but the fishery micros here, while they're lovely, they swell up beautifully, they don't ball very well at all. They're not very tight when you ball them up, not because I've fully soaked them. That's probably what's made them not be as sticky. So I'm just going to put a couple of handfuls of them in there, and then a couple of handfuls of ground bait, and that'll create pretty much a 50-50 mix. And that in turn means I can ball it. Not ball it as in make a load of jaffers and lump them in like Andy May would, but I can put it into a ball. And I know that's going to get to the bottom then. Whereas if I were to feed these loose, I mean, which they're going to be, as soon as they hit the water, they'd be loose. They'll spread over a much larger area, particularly with these diffusers that we've got going on up and down the lake. So I don't want that to happen. I just want that lovely little tight ball that's still going to break down really, really quickly and leave me a nice little pile of micro pellets on the bottom. Let me make another one of them. But it's enough to just kick that line off. I'm not going to fish it straight away, but it just puts a little bit of bait in the vicinity. Then I know I can drop on a little bit. I'm going to feed that. I'm going to feed a little pinch of maggots as well. That just gives me another option of hook bait. So the big emphasis at this time of year is versatility in your hook baits. I want to be able to catch anything. So all he's going to do, where is he? He's there. So I'm just going to feed that there, lovely. Let's bang on. The maggots to come out. It is as simple as that, and that's the deepest bit of me peg today. So, for the next bit, I need some goggles on so I can see. Very, very snotty today, people. I apologise for that. So, I'm going to start off on far bank. As we've always talked about, with the noise, whatever else, that's where the fish want to be at the start of the day. It's probably because it's where they live. I mean, they come into the middle to feed. They live in that vegetation on the far bank. So I'm going to impale an expander on. So that's beautiful on a 16, still quite positive this time of year. I can fish quite big hooks still. In fact, I'll do that with expanders all the time. You can get away with big hooks because it's a good old bait that you can hide your bait with. Now feeding, it's deciding whether I want to set a trap to start, a very tight trap, or I want a tiny bit of attraction. Yeah, for F1s, I'd want attraction. I'd want to sprinkle a few pellets in. Yeah, for carp, however, I don't. So I'm going to feed exactly the same ground bait mix across, but a much, 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 much smaller ball. He's going to be the size of a, don't know, little tiny conker, isn't he? He's going in. Just make sure he's just squashed in slightly so he stays in. Odds are I'm going to drop this out halfway, but we'll see. And yeah, we're going to start in that depth. So no need to pre-feed it or nothing like that. I'm going straight in. So if it was a bit colder, we'd be dobbing. But with it being still warm and the fish still wanting to feed and there being lots of colour in the water, I'm going to begin by putting the trap in. So everything's very, very slow and very, very deliberate. So I'm getting to my spot. I'm tapping my little ball in. He's going to fall straight in, go straight down. It's lovely and flat over there as well. So that'd be another thing I'd be really thinking about, is how my thingy needs to be, how my pellets need to be. It's no good feeding them in a ball like I just did if it's a slope. Yeah, they're not going to stay where you put them. So think about how you feed your bait depending how the bottom of the lake is. Float's a little bit low. I might need to pop that up in a minute, but we'll see. Yeah, I need to pop that float up a little bit. It's a bit too low and I can't see, so it's not helping with the little bit of movement with these diffusers. I need a little bit more bristle sticking up just so I can see what's going on. Let's give it a second and see how it sits. So I can handle that, that's nice and set. So with that expander on, and it's a really, really delicate float, it's got a 1.2 mil hollow bristle in, but the expander sort of holds it because there is a little bit of weight to that expander. So the way it's trying to move to the right today, with the way that the surface movement's going, that expander just helps for it to anchor just that slight little bit. So I've spoken about this a billion times when it comes to fishing expanders and showing bites up. We want big, heavy shot, close to the hook, and the bait incorporated into the float as much as possible. If it's not, we don't see what's going on, simple as. So I want it, my trap, as lovely and set as it can possibly be, which I feel like we're achieving at the minute. My pile's in, my bait's right over the top of it, and my float sort of set nice. You may have got enough bristle to see what's going on. That was a lovely little bite. That's not a 4-pound carp, Jakey, but that's a lovely emphasis of catching everything. Oh, I could have gone a bit lighter. This is going to be an F1 after you telling me there's no F1s in here as well, isn't it? He's not, he's a skin bob square pants. Again, the perfect example of catching anything. Yeah, well, I'm not upsetting my peg, I'm not putting loads of bait in. And in the winter, when them weights are so much lower, I mean, fish like that are invaluable. Absolutely, the amount of times I've caught 10-pound of them, almost by accident, or not by accident, but not as my target species, and that's what in turn helps you win the match, is ridiculous at this time of year. You can't afford to avoid them. Definitely not by the time you lot are watching this and it's gone right cold. I'll be in my cave at that point, hiding, hibernating, not coming out until Andy phones me and tells me he's caught shallow. So, same again, ball again. Yeah, always ball form to keep it as tight as possible. Yeah, the last thing I want to do is spread my bait. The tighter it is, the more chance of making things happen because it's right in that area and I'm not going to miss out on a bite. So it's not like summer where they're mopping up all your bait. It's really important to stack as many things in your favour of getting that bite when that one fish comes into your peg. So with that last fish, if it were carp, I'd be really happy that it's probably all gone. But with it being just a little skin bob square pants, odds are is it hadn't eaten all of my bait then. But that was beautiful. See how it just sat there, and then a lovely positive bite. That is what I'm hoping for. That one's had it on the settle, that one. Maybe, or maybe a bit of a liner on the way in. So feeding it in the ball form as well should stop too many liners happening because they haven't got those little bits of particles and pellets falling all over the place. it should stop them whizzing through and picking up any bits on the way through. And we should get much neater bites. So that's a much bigger one. Don't know if it's in the mouth or not, but it's a much, much bigger one. That one felt like it was off the bottom a bit. Very angry, Jake. This is what you... Oh, and he fell off. I think he was foul off that one. But straight back in. What I'm not going to do is feed. Yeah, that one had not been in my peg, eating me bait. That one was off the bottom, swimming through. So I'm going to be as fast as I possibly can. Excuse me. Get back out there over my pile before anything comes in and eats it. Watch them tentacles. We got him in nice and quick. I do feel like I've got the wrong float on. I needed a float with a bit more buoyancy but a bit more lead on. I've gone a little bit too delicate for how many fish are still feeding. Like I said, it is still fairly good. Being the last day of October. It's not rock bottom for us yet, but it is coming. So rig wise, I've got a 0.2 wire on this. Really 0.3 would have been better. Little bit more lead on down the rig. And that's just shot with spread out 10s in the bottom third of the rig. I mean, dead standard for a soft pellet rig. It's all about bite magnification, seeing what's going on as quickly as possible. That's all that's important to me, that my rig can stay stable and keep things where I want to be. So that catching through the water and airy-fairy rigs do not have the place when feeding in this way, because none of my bait is sinking nicely. It's sinking like house brick. Staying very accurate. The last thing I expect the fish to do is intercept anything. I don't know what's happening here, whether there's little tiny fish in my peg or whether I'm getting lots of liners. So you just need to be a bit more patient. Wait for a more positive bite. There's lots of little weird indications there. So even with it getting colder, what I would still be looking at, which I don't think we've actually got today to be fair, it's still changing my depth for this. Yeah, there's still potential. Oh, the wind. That whatever depth I'm in could be too deep. So if I'm seeing indications and then fish just simply do not want to go down because they've had a load of rain or it's really high pressure or whatever else, then my initial line, I wouldn't feed multiple lines to begin with other than one in the middle and one across. But my initial line across tells me whether it's the right depth I'm in, and then I can start putting other lines in that depth if I need to. So if this first one fails to produce, or in today's case shows up too many false indications like them, where the fish just don't want to go down in that depth, then the next lines that I think about feeding, or my next little trap areas that I want to put in, will be in different depths. They'll be further up that slope just so I can be at the depth the fish want to be in rather than dictate to them. So the colder it gets, the worse it gets, if anything, and how stubborn them little buggers can be. Just not wanting to go down if it's you're feeding in too cold a water or whatever reason it might be. Loads of indications, just it ain't going. Loads and loads. Give it a go. So I may need to feed again. It's been that window with how many indications I've had on that float as to the amount of bait I fed. Odds are it's all gone now. I mean, more than likely there is no bait left in my peg. So lots and lots of little indications. So there's no way there's any bait through the water. The bait can only be on the bottom. I'm getting lots of little wobbles and wibbles and whatever else, but not proper bites, which tell me they've been down, eaten it, and now they're whizzing about waiting for the next lot almost. So what I'll do, I'll come in, set my trap again, and go again, hopefully catch another one. Just need to sort this rig out first. Right, rig alteration, and I put a different float on. I put a 0.4 on instead. I wasn't liking that one at all, just not enough buoyancy, not showing enough up to wafty your belty. But as I said, it needed refeeding as well, which is the key thing. So back in with it, another ball. Keep things as accurate as possible. So I'd expect them few problems that we had to start with, the rig wobbling about, a few liners. While the fish is still active, that often happens, but you almost got to persevere with it for a little bit to get a true understanding of what's going on. So many times I've made decisions quickly, get off there, and they've been wrong as a result. So I do think you need to evaluate for a little bit longer as to exactly what's happening. That float might need another BB on, but we'll see. I'll dot that down a bit more when we come in, but I'm happy with that. I can see a positive indication on it. Yeah, put up with the aggro to begin with. Just for a little bit. You might foul hook one, you might foul hook two, you might get a few dodgy indications, but then very quickly it will calm down. And then once it's calmed down off that first point, it often doesn't happen again all day. Even with your new lines, when you bring them into it, it just doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. Right, let me just put a quick BB on that float, knock it down a bit. So my bait's still in, I'm happy with that. What did that need? What are we going for? 12 or an 11? I'm going to go for a 12. Quick number 12. I spoke about this a billion times. The lower that float is, the more I see. And above all else, the more indications that I see, which is so important to gain an understanding. Yeah, if you have too much bristle out and it's wiggling all over the place and you can't see it, you don't know if there's a fish been in your peg or not and eating your bait. So by having my bristle, not stupid low, but low, it just shows up those little tiny indications so much better when big and brave here. And I put 2 number 12s on. I made, oh no, wow, we got it just right. That's beautiful. That's how I want it this time of year. Yeah, enough to see the indications, not too much that I'm getting a headache and I'm striking at every little tiny wobble. So I feel like he's sat nice now. It does feel a little bit wintry. See how much better that was. Proper doink, proper indication. The carp's just left me peg as well. So there's an odd one about. They're just very, very active, it seems. Just sit here nice now. I'm still happy that that trap's in. Yeah, I've just had that indication then, so there's been a fish in my peg, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt for another. I can waste another 30 seconds to a minute on it. I'll just sit. If nothing happens, I'm back in and feeding again. So in turn, we spoke about this loads, but with expanders on, having that heavy rig, having the stability, all them things that I keep reiterating all the time, they give you a really great understanding of what you've got to do when you have got to feed. Because see, this time I've gone back in after missing that bite, nothing's happening. Yeah, so it's telling me really, really quickly, odds are all my bait's been eaten. I mean, yes, I could still catch one, of course I could. I've got a single bait in the water, but there's nothing there to keep them excited. There's no trap. There's just my hook bait, which is very, very, very little, dull. They're not going to home in on it. There's not enough there to get them excited. So I'm going to give this 2 more seconds. If it doesn't go under, and come back in, and I'm feeding it again. Not happening, is it? See, there's lack of indications that time. Absolutely nothing there whatsoever. So I'm going to come off this. I'm not going to come off it, so I'm going to have one more cast. But what I do want to do in a sec is have a little try down middle as well, and I do this even in a match because I want to see really early on what my options are. Because what I definitely believe happens is you get is it a routine? Yeah, sort of a routine. But there's a pattern as to moving about how many fish you can often catch. And you'll find that by having multiple lines fed, 3 or 4 lines fed potentially, you can skip between all those lines and catch 2 fish sometimes. Sometimes it's 1 fish, sometimes it's 5 fish, who knows. But very quickly, I want to identify how many fish I can catch before they settle late on and I can increase their numbers. But to begin with, I want to see how quickly I can skip around my lines and catch that number of fish, however many fish are on offer. I say it wouldn't be the right way of doing things if I was after 60, 70 fish in a day. I'd want to get lots feeding in one area, which might be the way today. It's not what it's about. We're doing this for the colder weather that's coming. Right, get that right over that now, and I've got bait in. But yeah, for the winter, identifying me little runs that I could potentially catch early on, it's massive because you're not wasting time on a line then. You're literally catching that 1 or 2 fish and then you're moving elsewhere. Like this is potentially getting quieter now. See, I've caught me skimmer and I've had a few bits of aggro going on. But it may be they're going to come off this already. That could actually happen. A lot of lack of venue knowledge is playing a part with this. See, I'm getting indications again this time. That's better. We've got a different fish. What's this one, Jakey? This is... Oh, come on! Felt all right, that one as well. I don't think it was, but it felt all right. Definitely wasn't. Right, one more go, and then I'm going to swap depths. I'm going to try in this deeper water. See if the ones down there are a bit more well-behaved. But still, bin of fish in my peg, feed again. I'm only putting that in every go. I mean, if you break that down, it's not a lot of bait. Yeah, and if that's landing in a pile like that on the bottom, that's one suck for a carp once it's doing that. Yeah, it's nothing. One carp comes in, that is gone, and you're fishing over nothing. So just because you're putting the amount of bait in, because it's so tight, you've got to remember that it goes far quicker than what it'd do if you were feeding it loose. But like I keep babbling about, if you were to feed it loose, you create so much of a bigger spread of bait that when it is really, really hard, it means that the fish might come into your peg, eat some bait and leave without eating your hook bait. I don't want that happening. Back in, put my ball in. And he's nice. So I can just let my rig settle here because it's so flat. I've not got to push it in like I normally would up to a slope. It's just lovely flat bottom here. I can just let my rig go in, and as long as it's up toe, which most of the time it feels like it's just moving to my right slightly today. So my bait's going to my left, my float's going slightly to my right. It keeps everything nice and tight, creates that curve that I'm always going on about as well. See how all the aggro's stopped now? Now it's just feeding, sitting, nice and stopped, waiting for a bite. It's gone beautiful now. This is how I want it. So it's a shame we didn't catch one of them ones early. I probably missed the fish then by probably fishing the wrong bait for this time of year. So I could have probably been a bit more selective, but not what we're here for. So for now, I can just sit, be patient. I know my trap set, and it's lovely, and I'm away now. It's weird, it's got worse, but it's, for me, that's better, because I can just sit and wait for a positive indication now. I'm not having any aggro. And now my rotation can begin. I can sit on here, I'm going to catch one, and then hopefully if I nail one this cast, I can come straight off this and go down the middle, knowing that all my bait's gone from the far bank, because I've caught one, it's probably eaten me pile. And then when I go back over there in a little bit, it'll be a clean pallet to fish on. Because I do feel like that's a big thing that occurs in the winter, is that accumulation of bait is massive and terrible for your peg. I mean, when it comes to pellets in particular, an accumulation of pellets on the bottom definitely ends up being an unsafe area for them fish to be. They're not happy and they'll leave an area just because there's too much bait on the bottom. And you definitely see piles as bait as areas they're going to get caught on. So it's not like summertime when they get excited and mop it all up later on. They just move away from it, and that's where, again, the other lines come into things. As you go, oh, come on, that was my chance of catching one then. So I have seen, though, there's an odd little fizz coming up in the middle now, which is brilliant. That's exactly what I want to see, is some indications of life down there. So if I can see that before I go on it, it doesn't get better than that. It gives me confidence that something's down there, something's feeding, before I've even had a go. And I've not fed anything else on that. It just has the one initial little ball of bait, almost just to grab their attention, to bring some fish into the vicinity. And then I can feed it exactly the same when I go on it. I'll do the same. I'll just put some little traps in and fish them out just as we're doing with this. Because say it's a shame it's not a it's not a positive way of fishing. I mean, feeding everything with a cup and keeping things so accurate and almost a bit boring. But it does the both important factors of being versatile so I can catch anything, but also never spoiling my peg as well, which is so important. I'd rather play them odds every single day and make sure I get the most out of my peg and don't spoil it, because it's going to be a lot trickier than I think it could be, than being too aggressive, spoiling my peg by feeding loads of bait and wrecking it instantly. For me, I'd much rather play this sort of card and just tick along and let it gradually get better of its own accord, than to take a risk by feeding loads of bait or feeding regular bait, loose feeding aggressively. For me, it ain't the one. I'm not liking this though, it's gone flat this time, nothing's happening. I'll give it 30 more seconds. If I ain't got a bite, I'm going to come off this, I'm going to drop on that middle line and just see what happens. See that, then big heavy shot, everything showing up things. It'd show up if there was any present, and there's not. The last couple of casts I fed me trap and it's been a long time until I've had an indication. See a little indication then, but not a bite. Come on, I'll catch one quick one. I'm going to give it benefit of the doubt. Assume my bait's still here, which I think it is. Let's see if one's willing. Might have a peg full of barbel and that's why I can't catch him. This might be the barbel area, mightn't it? Whee! Oh, how good's that? We love a big skim, jumping skim bob. Did you get him as well? I hope we got him. Airborne skim bob. Again, fish I wouldn't have caught if I'd have fished hard pellets. These just don't eat them. But this one's a lot bigger as well. This one's a pounder. Is he a pounder? He might be a bit bigger than yeah, he's a pounder. Easy, isn't he? He's a pound two. It's your fault, I'm blaming you for that. But it was all good. He was in the mouth and all happy, so I don't mind that. But still, it was too slow. My elastic was probably a bit heavy for him as well. I want to go down the middle and see what's occurring down there as well, just quickly, because I know that that's ticking over across. I know the fish will come to that really quickly if I feed it again, or fairly quickly. Hopefully without the aggro next time. Need a pot. So I want to have a quick look down the middle and see if the same thing's occurring to me. Bait's exactly the same. Yeah, another little ball of that, ground bait and micros. Beautiful. And I'm going to feed it before I unship, because otherwise I'll mess it right up. How far am I going? Oh no, I'm going to go for it. We're going to go for it. Wild, aren't I? Wild. Let's get him in. I don't know how towy this is going to be with these diffusers on. We'll plop that in. Let's see if anything's there. So them fizzers actually weren't over my bait that I was seeing. They were a little bit further out. Let's see if it's moving the same way. Lovely. So that floats far better. Put a bigger float on that one. I put a 0.5 on. And it's so much more stable. Straight away, I'm loving that. It just looks right. And the float, literally, even in that, there's quite a big surface movement. It's pushing through quite a bit. It just holds beautifully, because the bottom of the rig is bossing the top of the rig, because it's got so much weight and anchorage with a big heavy pellet on. It just sits nice as a result. And just to make me even more confident with my accuracy, you see all that little fizzing that's going on. Not bubbles, it's just the activity in the ground bait and the pellets. It's pretty much right over the top of my bait, so I know I'm fishing bang over it. First indication then. So that deeper water, I'm probably gonna mess myself right up by saying this, but for some reason you tend to find when you come away from the far bank, away from the vegetation, the slope, whatever, the bites just become different down the middle. You tend to feed in pellets and ground bait. You tend to suffer far less false indications. I mean, you're not necessarily where they want to be. If they're down there, they want to feed. So you get proper bites because they want to be on the bottom. Whereas when you get near that far bank where all that cover is, yes, you have got a percentage of fish that want to feed, but you've also got a percentage of fish that are just there. Oh, better. I would have messed that up. That was a proper Houdini bite. Messed him right up. Pick another one on. Proper liking me expanders. They're lovely, lovely, dense, and it's just right. They're never splitting when I'm putting them on the hook. Am I going to feed again? Yeah, let's feed one more little tiny one. Just because we had a bite, so you don't know what it was off. If it was off a carp, all my bait's gone. You can see there's no activity there now. Either I've had that bite and there's no fizzing. So I'll put another one in, get the fizzing going again. See, that bait might not quite get to the bottom without breaking up, but it'll be very close. It'll get down halfway minimum. So it will still stay very, very accurate. So I've still got the option as well on both lines if I need to, of swapping about with hook baits. I mean, feeding in this way, yeah boy. Hey, it's bigger for different fish as well, that's a carp in it. See, the last thing you'd expect to do is hook a carp down there that early. And in the summer, you'd never ever do it because you'd just be on silt and it'd be messy. Whereas this time of year, you can get away with it. So in the deepest area of the peg, which is not where you'd expect them to, or it's not where they would be in the warmer weather, this time of year, they're often happy to sit in that 3, 4, 5 foot. And they're lovely and docile as well. This is when they're happy, when they behave like this. They're right good. Which did I put that skimmer in, Jake? I put it in my left net, didn't I? So I've got to keep me carp and me skimmers separate on this lake. Oh, yeah, boy. See, it's still a low thought of as a little fish method, innit? Expanders. I mean, that's a what? That's a £5, £5.5. I'm not going to pick him up because I'll throw him in because I can't hold fish. But mega start. I mean, on that line again, minimal bait. But you see what I mean about the traps as well? You've got to keep replenishing that trap all the time. A fish like that has at the lot. There is nothing down there. That's gone in one suck. And it's probably about a fifth of a method feeder's worth of bait. It's absolutely nothing what I'm feeding. So you have to keep replenishing that pile all the time. And of course, if it needs to, it can increase a bit, but that doesn't catch me net. I've caught a bit of weed. I'll sort him in a minute. But yeah, that little bit, absolutely plenty for that one mouthful for the fish, which is all they're after. So I'm gonna sort that rig out. Get me oh, we still got him. See, that stayed on. Even after hooking that weed, that expander stayed on. How good's that? And there's another fish in my peg already. I've got a little pimpy bubble there, ready. So there must be a tiny little bit of bait left. I mean, only the dregs. There's not going to be a lump or anything. But there's a tiny little bit of bait left on that peg. There's enough to keep them happy. Have I lost a shot? No, we're all good. See how lovely, and just feel in control of everything all the time by doing it this way. And I think what I was talking about then, just before we hooked that one, was I've still got the option as well of going either way, either more selective, if I put a piece of corn on, if I was having problems off little fish, or I could even put some maggots on if it was rock bottom. I could stop with the expander as well and go really, really non-selective, which is what I've got just in case. And I could feed some maggots, not necessarily feed many, but I could put maggots on the hook, still feeding me micro and ground bait little traps. But a couple of maggots over that can be a massive thing. But say, to begin with, the best of both, expanders is the happy way of starting for me. Let's see what this happens now, see if we get another one. So it did feel like there was one there. There was definitely something fizzing before I fed. Maybe that extra bait's put one off, I don't know. Excuse me. But weirdly, already I'm feeling not catching a second on this potentially. So particularly early in the session. It could just be an area. I keep putting a trap in, maybe a bigger than normal trap, or bigger than normal pile. Leave it, go elsewhere, catch one. Oh yeah, it's a fish in me peg now, big daft bubble then. Hopefully he should eat it because there's very little bait down there. What am I on about? yeah, feed an amount, leave it, go elsewhere, catch one, and I may be able to return to this every 15 minutes maybe and catch one really quickly. I probably caught that one I caught within a minute or two of dropping in, or within 5 minutes anyway. So that could almost start being my pattern, is that I spend 10 minutes across and then 5 minutes down the middle, and I keep rotating that. So the faster I can identify that, hopefully within the first hour of a session, the more sort of efficient as I can be, the most I can make the most of my lines then. I'm definitely not catching another one here. It doesn't feel like there's much competition occurring down there. There's a fish there though, same again, a little pimpy blow. I'm really surprised with catching them skimmers across, they're not queued up a little bit down here. I'd have expected to catch a lot more skimmers in that deeper water than I would across. That's an indication then. Look. See how good them expanders are. That one has now been stuck in a weed and had a big strike, and he's still clinging on. So that is the benefits of both not over soaking them, not keeping them in water, and a big hook. It just makes you efficient so much better. You're not coming in, fannying about, rebaiting. It's just good. There are some fish there. There's a bit of bubbling going on. Give it 2 more minutes. That's an indication then, that was just a liner. Yeah, I'll give it 2 more minutes and then I will go back across, because I want to keep in touch with lines. I don't want to completely forget about them. I want to keep in touch with what's going on. Say single fish don't give me an idea of what's going on clear enough early in the session. I want to skip about quite a bit just until I can settle and gain that understanding of what's occurring. Come on, a little bubble next to me float there. What are they? Are they skimmers or are they carp? Don't know, but I'm going to come off it. I'm just going to feed it first. I'm going to feed it with this cup, just with a decent amount. Yeah, it's going to get a double helping sort of thing. Just nice. Plop him in, whiz back across and see how quickly something happens there. And then I reckon once I've been across, my understanding of how the day's going to progress will happen quite quick. Because if nothing occurs across here now, then my attention's going to be very much focused on down the middle. And it may be that I start bringing extra lines down the middle into it. I've got mine covered there, but there's nothing stopping me putting another one in, just past the aerator, another one there maybe. I mean, that's going to be the line I focus on, because it's where the fish want to be on the day. So, because we found that out as quickly as we possibly can, it should put us ahead of everyone else. I mean, I could be stubborn and have just sat on that far bank, waiting, have caught 1 or 2. But by almost not giving up on your first hour, committing to understanding things in your first hour, we can work out how the peg's going to behave a lot better. I'm getting a bit chilly now. That wind's actually right cold, Jake. I actually nearly believe that it is winter now. I don't like it. Some fizzing going on there, like just past halfway across the canal. I don't know what that is. Right, same again. Trap in. Try and pull my rig this way a bit so it stays tight. Let's see how quickly they come to me this time. Last time it was quite erratic because it was the first feed and it's still fairly warm, the water. This time it should be different, however. I shouldn't suffer the liners and the problems. I should either get a bite or nothing will happen if they don't want to be there. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Bit of bait I fed down the middle as well. Just look for any signs over that. So if there's any fizzing going on to tell me that they're on it, they've eaten it all or whatever else. Let's see, look, it's just completely different this time on it. It's taking so long for anything to happen. Literally no fish has even came into that peg yet. But I'm still happy that I've not created a danger area or anything. all the bait that I fed there has gone. I mean, when we left it, left the peg, it was after just catching that skimmer. So odds are there's nothing over there now. Oh, little indication then. That's the first one coming to me swim. So I don't feel like they're hanging high and whizzing about or anything anymore like I did initially. And if I'd have been too erratic in making me decisions, I could easily be fishing in the complete opposite area of the canal where I want to be now. I could be trying to find little rat holes where it's really shallow and fishing them. Whereas 15 minutes later, I'm actually starting to believe that there's far more fish deeper than there is shallower. So yeah, you've got to be careful how quickly you make them decisions just through what you see, and they can often be wrong if you're too quick to act on things. Eventually we're up on there. What's he, Carpy? Doesn't feel quite right in now as well. Everything seems to be off bottom and a bit weird when I'm hooking it over there. Same again, not happy being on the deck. I'm going to give it one more go. And then I think it has been a nice example of showing how fish behave and just the things that you're looking for, as stacking as many things in your favour as you possibly can in terms of versatile hook baits, ways of feeding to keep things accurate, all the little things that both help you understand your peg and ultimately put a few more fish in your net because you're understanding the things you're looking for, so you're fishing in the right places. Say the little things that make a difference. It puts 1 or 2 fish more in your net. And today, when the what? Well, that was £5, that first one. If I catch 3 more of them than anyone else, because I've been on it a bit better with my decision making and my accuracy and hook bait have been better than everyone else's, or more versatile than anyone else's, that can be the little things that are needed just to put you ahead of the rest. So still going to keep an eye on that middle bit. Not see. Oh, I've just seen my first one then. My first little blip has just come off on that then. But it really is seeming that that's where the fish want to be. They don't want to be when I'm fishing now. So if I do get a bite, it's a false indication. That was a proper Houdini bite there, and there's nothing there. So often that occurs at this time, or the colder it gets, the worse it is. And you probably would catch a cross, but you'd have to dob and things like that. Feeding's not the one. The impression that I'm getting is that I'm just in the area that the fish are when I'm going across. I'm not where the feeding fish want to be. So I'm going to spend a lot more time now down the middle, I think. Maybe be a bit more patient down the middle, because this 5-minute to 10-minute period I spent across, nothing's gone to me net. So while it was needed to let that middle line settle and allow the next groups to come in so I can catch 1 or 2 off it, it's not productive. So I need to find, my next step is to find somewhere else that's more productive. I mean, today that would be another middle line. That is what I do. I'm not going to bother doing it. It's just repeating the same thing of what I've done. But really quickly I'm seeing what's occurring. And I'd have my plummet on, I'd come off this line, have my plummet on, find the line over there, or that, I'd probably go that way, it looks a bit nicer for seeing me float. And I'd put a second middle line in so I can just rotate these 2, so I've always got somewhere else. I want 1 or 2 other options than my most favoured area to be able to rotate. And then obviously I've got my edges as well for later on, but I'm definitely not feeling them now because of the depth on them. That's in the mouth. What's that? Is that another massive big skin bob, or is he a Carps? I don't know what he is, Jake. It's going to be something weird. Just as I was saying that, a boat in across, we catch one. About right, innit? Here's a Carp as well, this. So now maybe it's a case of I'm just need to let the lake warm up a bit and the fish get a bit more active. Here's another lovely Carp. Not quite as big as the first one, but still. Oh, he's a weird one. He's like a little, he's a pretty one. I can hold him up. Oh, he's a right good one. Look at him. What would the carp weirdos call him? A scaly banger, he is, Jake. Caught myself a scaly banger. Look at him, he's like a pretty, what do they call that? Starburst, isn't it? They're just sweets to me. But a completely different stamp though as well to what I caught down the middle. It's worth paying a little bit of attention to. So catching that one, that changes everything all immediately. In that I wouldn't put another line in down the middle now, I'd be patient. I was acting too quickly. Whereas I am going to try down the middle again. I'm not going to feed an extra line down the middle because I now have got that option of a cross. It's probably me just being a bit impatient, that one. Because there are an odd fish to be caught across, and if anything, with that sun starting to get a little bit warmer as the day goes on, the fish are more than likely going to be over there today looking at the conditions. So I'm going to try down middle again. It may find that with these conditions now changing, sun's come out, it's going a bit pretty. The middle line, it might swap and they might start moving over there a bit more. I can actually notice as I look at it, I don't think you lot will be able to see that on the camera, but there's a little bit of colour on the far bank, just stirring up a little bit, particularly to the left over there, as if there's more fish starting to move in that sort of depth. So everything still remains flexible. And what I want to do now is hopefully just catch another one down middle. So I've left that for, I wasn't checking on my clock, but I reckon it's been about 7 or 8 minutes since last time I was on it. So I want to see if that's long enough to feed it, leave it, drop on it, catch that fish quite quickly. I want to bite within 5 minutes. See, a little indication then. If not, if it takes me 10 minutes to get a bite now, or I don't get a bite within 10 minutes, I know I've got to leave it longer. And it may be that it doesn't even need feeding too much once I leave it, maybe just a tiny little bit of bait. I might get a quicker response on it. Because that is a key thing, like I keep mentioning, working out how quickly I can rotate is massive. But you also have to be realistic about it. You can't swap every minute and keep catching one. Yeah, so just got to be patient. I can see, oh yeah, bubble then. Now that sun's gone in now as well, but only for a tiny little time, unfortunately. But that could be enough to get a bite. So I pay a load of attention to that, both in the summer for mugging and in the winter, just clocking how long the sun's going to be in for, if there's a big cloud bank or just a tiny little puffy cloud. It's amazing how the fishing can change in that little weird bit of time. It's a noisy crow, innit? Still, I'm happy sitting here, so there's no aggro, no indications, no liners. I'd love it if I just got a lovely neat bite. But I think I probably spent 3 or 4 minutes on this now and I've still not had a nice clean one like I'm hoping for. Oh, I whinged that in then, didn't I? And then I messed it right up. Oh, come on. Oh, we're happy feed again. No bubbles then as well, and that one was in my peg. Don't feel like they're really rooting for your bait today. There's just an odd one coming in, having a little mooch. That must be the difference. In the summer, they get their heads down on that silt and kick it up and bubble and probably make it impossible to see your bait. Whereas we seem to have passed that window now, it's just got that little bit colder, a bit clearer, where they must graze so much more delicately over the silt. So you can get away with fishing maggots or even micros and ground bait over it. Because they're not grubbing about like they do in the winter. Not carp anyway. Skimmers are still a pain in the bum. Little skimmers can kick your peg right up, but I do feel like I'm in control of this all the time, so that's gone lovely. Just proper bite on to your carp or a bream. He's a big carp. See, the stamp feels completely different on the two lines. Yeah, across I'm hooking skimmers and a smaller carp, whereas down this middle bit, the 2 bites that I've had are going to go flipping nearly £10 between them. So if I have that in my rotation every hour, catch 2 or 4 fish down the middle every hour, all of a sudden I've got £20 plus what I catch across, and I'm emptying it weight-wise, but I'm not actually being that busy flogging a line to death. Here's another 4 5 pounder nearly. And a lovely fish. Should try, I'll try a little bit to hold him, but it won't look good. I'll try my very best not to drop him. I am an official fish juggler. But a lovely, lovely example of a winter trap setting type fish. You know what I mean? No good at all. I'm just going to drop him, aren't I? Useless at holding fish. But yes, that's my basic thinking when it comes to, what we're going to call it, early winter shutdown commercials. When it's carp, say not F1s, F1s bring a whole new way of feeding into it. We need to loose feed for them. But for when it's carp, skimmers, this is a perfect example of it. Setting little traps, rotating them, gaining an understanding of quickly as possible while using the right baits. Absolutely perfect for this time of year. So hopefully you learned a little bit. I'm going to carry on, catch a few more, and then yeah, I'll see you in April when it gets a little bit warmer.